I spent my entire life growing up and living in Holmes County.
I've lived in Holmes County just about all of my life. When I was 1 year old, I moved here from Sugar Creek.
Well, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. I lived there for 43 years. Since October 28th, the place that I now reside is Orrville, Ohio.
And living in Holmes County all of my life, it wasn't easy to identify specific times when it's like, oh, that was a very degrading comment.
Growing up in elementary school, I didn't really have that many stereotype things. Like, people didn't know exactly what the stereotypes were.
It was well, I'm your friend, so I can say these types of things, and you just kind of blow it off. You just brush it away.
But as we got into high school, when I started doing track, I started getting really fast, and people were like, oh, that's just because of your skin color. And I told them, no, it's not. It's me putting in hard work, and like, this work that I put in, this is why I'm fast. It's not just because I'm brown or the skin I have.
And my response to random moments like that would result in me just being quiet, or me just kind of like smirking and just like kind of looking away and not saying anything.
It brought a fear to me that even at the age of 43 now, being in Orrville, I'm making sure that, am I going to a place that's safe? Am I entering into a town where I won't get pulled over because of the color of my skin or my hair being too ethnic? But just recently, I had to make up in my mind that fear can't rule me because of people's ignorance.
But there were several moments that I have specifically in mind that I remember. Like, I was in 6th grade at a Highland Boys basketball game, and we were all sitting in the bleachers, and everybody's like high on all their adrenaline and excitement about the game, and you're teasing each other, having a good time with all your friends. But when you come and you're just trying to have a good time, and then somebody offhandedly in the highness of that adrenaline are like, okay, so Selena, like, so when did you cross the border? Or like, when did you come here? And I'm like, what?
Can change occur? And the answer is yes. But does racism still exist? Well, it exists not only where we live, but if you turn on the news, you see the killings in Chicago. You see racism when we were going through our presidential election. But can change happen? I believe that I was brought here for change. I believe that the church should bring change.
In my neighborhood, I do heavily believe that racism does exist, and it's plain and simple. It does exist there. Like, I could go walking down the street and I can see people just staring at me just for my skin color.
One racial incident that I had actually took place in a church. I was preaching, and a group of people, because I was a woman, but an African American woman, a group of men got up and left. And then another group of men sat to the left and sat with their arms folded, trying to intimidate me in church while I was preaching the gospel. But what they underestimated was the fact that I'm not going to easily be moved, because I went to college at a school in Indiana where racism was obvious in the town. I remember my family bringing me back to college in the evening, and there was a sign posted on a building that said all blacks are off of the streets by 5 p.m.
I had an encounter with a police officer. I was sitting in a parking lot with my windows down this one summer night waiting on a friend, and there had been reports of break-ins recently around the area, and a sheriff K-9 unit went by, and I watched him go by, and he looked at me, and then he came up behind me and pulled on his flashers. And I was kind of confused because I was just sitting in a school parking lot, and I was like, okay, I wonder what I did wrong. And I was just waiting on my one friend to get there because we were going to go and hang out. So he comes up and he's like, what are you up to here? And I was like, just waiting for my friend to come here. He's like, where's your friend?" I was like, "Oh, he's still coming. It'll probably be like 5 more minutes, something like that." And he asked, "Do you have anything on you or anything like that?" And I was like, "No, I don't, sir." I was like, "Do you have anything in your car?" I was like, "Not that I know of." And looking back at it now, I probably shouldn't have said that, but I mean, you can never be certain if anybody like put something in your car, so that's why I said that. And then that sparked some suspicion in him too. So he's like, "Not that you know of?" I'm like, "No, officer, I don't." And he asked for my license registration. I gave him that. He went back to his car, ran that, and he came back and he asked me to step out of the vehicle. So I did that. And at that time, I noticed that up at the basketball courts, there were a bunch of people playing basketball over there, and that I had gotten their attention. They were all watching me from the fence. So he asked me if he could search my vehicle and pat me down. And I wasn't in the mood to start trouble or do anything like that, so I said, "Just sure, go for it." So he has me go up against his car and he pats me down. And right at that moment, my one friend went by in his car and he just kept on going. And then he goes and searches my vehicle and he finds nothing. And then I ask him, "So why did you choose to pat me down or anything like that?" And he said, "Well, there's been recent break-ins around here lately and it just kind of looks suspicious because you're just sitting up here in a car by yourself." But the thing is, I was in a public area. It was like the middle of town. It was roughly around 5 p.m. in Berlin. It was on a Sunday too, so it didn't really add up that much.
There were more moments like that than I can count, and I remember not really thinking it was a big deal to everyone else. Like, this was just something that my family dealt with, or with the very, very few other minorities that were in the county. Just, you deal with it, but you just move on, because no one will really, you feel like no one's really gonna understand. Until I went to college, and there were a lot more seminars and workshops on this type of thing, and you realize this is actually something you need to tend to, because the awareness of celebrating people's cultures versus like degrading them and putting them down and teaching them that only one specific race is like the norm, and when you're outside of that, it's, I don't know, it's really important to know.
To tear down the walls of racism, to tear down the walls of ignorance, you first have to abandon your own fear. If we're in church together, why not step to someone of a different race and say, "Can I sit with you?" It all starts with relationship. I believe the currency of the kingdom is relationship. Christ built relationships with people of all walks of life.
The stereotypes that people have of me is sometimes does have like a reflection on myself, like how I think about myself, but also the fact that I'm not fully black or not fully white kind of hits a little bit hard too, because you get stereotypes from both sides. Like, black people are like, "Oh, you're not truly black, you're not full or anything like that," and then white people are like, "Wow, you are black." It's like you kind of get hit hard like times two. Like, people don't understand that, but it does happen. And sometimes I look at myself and I'm like, why am I like this?
There are certain people that acknowledge the Hispanic thing every single time I talk to them, and it has to be a constant. You realize I'm more than just a race.
But that's not the way to open the door. The way to open the door is, how can I get to know you? Tell me your story. And I believe we'll find more similarities than differences.
I'm lost in my world. I don't know exactly where I do fit in. And then sometimes other times I just don't think about it. I'm my own person.